Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, folks, wherever you're joining us from. Welcome back. Wednesday, time for another Light 'em Up Lounge, time for another inspiring and enlightening conversation with two special guests. I'm very glad that we have them sitting side by side, coming live to us from the Beehive Cigar Lounge in Salt Lake City in Utah. Um, I very much look forward to today's show. Thanks for joining us, everybody who's here at the lounge, friends, family, regulars. You know the spiel. Chime in, make yourselves heard. But for everybody watching us over on the YouTube live stream, if you have any questions, please chime in. Please put your thoughts, your comments underneath or next to the live stream, and I'll happily forward your questions to Brandon and to Kendrick. And here they are. Thank you very much for joining us, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us.
Our pleasure.
The privilege and pleasure is all ours. We want to talk a little bit about the Beehive. We want to talk about Apostate Cigars, of course, a relatively new brand you guys launched in 2020. Same as us, actually. Here's here's to a shared journey over the last
Right.
couple of years with many exciting moments and discoveries and great friendships, fellowships, and partnerships forged. Um, there's plenty to unearth and discover during today's show. Obviously, you both guys have retail background, and in fact, you're sitting at the very spot at this moment. And all of that led, besides many other things, obviously, to the foundation and the inception of Apostate Cigars, with plenty of exciting stories behind it, incredible depth and detail in the entire branding, packaging, and design aspect, which I would imagine is due to a large part because of your particular experience on the retail side of things. How much has that forged your perspective on the industry and sort of impacted or influenced you when thinking about launching your own brand as to, you know, this is what we think brands should do fundamentally different in order to be relevant and great partners for a tobacconist retailer?
Uh, I mean, everything that I know, everything that we know about the industry, about tobacco, about cigars, everything that we know comes from our experience on the retail side of things. Smoking thousands of different cigars, you know, hearing sales pitches from every brand that there is almost. Just seeing how everybody does things a little bit differently. It all played a part in how Apostate ended up being what it is. And I mean, we can go into all kinds of details about that, but it's absolutely foundational to what we do.
100%.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, in all honesty, when we all walk into a well-stocked humidor these days, the honest perception would be, God's sake, there's plenty of great cigars out there, right? And there's so many wonderful choices, obviously depending on the size of the respective humidor and the shop and the lounge, but there's plenty of great cigars on the market. Why or how did you think that the world needed another cigar and needed another brand?
Well, I can't speak for Brandon. I'll let him speak for himself. But for me personally, it wasn't so much about, okay, the world needs this. It was more of just a desire to jump into the creative process. And, you know, after being a connoisseur of art for however many years, deciding to make our own art. And that's what I
Mhm.
think cigars are. It's an art, not a science. It's uh it's just another form of human expression, really.
Yeah, I think for us, it started as an outlet for creativity that turned into a passion for participation in this realm, right? I think our approach initially was something that we wanted to see life from that side of the table, but now it's almost, I think, and I can't speak for Kendrick, but we've had this conversation, is that when we're blending cigars and we're trying to think about what it is that we want to bring to the market or bring to consumers, it turns into a game of like, well, what have we not smoked or been able to smoke that we would like to smoke? Maybe it's not, maybe it doesn't exist yet, or maybe it's just hard to find. If we can't find it, let's make it, right? So now we're kind of blending cigars in a way that it fills a gap for us personally as smokers, but it's also, we're finding, filling a gap for a lot of consumers too, trying to be unique in the way that we blend. Like you said, you walk into a fully stocked humidor, you shop with your eyes first, right? So what does our packaging look like? What does our marketing look like? You have to stand out a little bit to get their attention in the first place, but then you've got to have a good product to make them come back for more. So I think the retail experience, like you were talking earlier, definitely lends itself to helping us navigate that a little more easily.
Mhm. I like the fact that you mentioned the artist's analogy. Um, well, there's also the image of the starving artist. And did you think about that? Was that even a concern of yours, or did you have a firm business plan in mind, or was it more like, fuck it, let's do this, let's do it the way we want it, and then we'll figure out the rest as we go?
Well, it's kind of a combination of both. You
Wow.
have to have some sort of plan, but I think you have to be able to adjust that plan as necessary. Once you get more experience and more information about, things. Like for example, our initial plan was to release our core 8 blends over a series of 5 years. And we quickly decided that we should move that time frame up, and now we've done it in 3. Things like that, you need to adjust as you go.
Interesting that
But
you mentioned that number of 8 core blends, pardon. Why 8? Is that going back to what Brandon said for, here's voids that we see in the market and we would like to fill them, and trying to offer something new? And that ended up being those 8, or was it more from a philosophical perspective, and then you sort of build the cigar experience around that?
everything about our branding and the cigars and how many blends we have are all tied into one whole thing. So the reason why we wanted to do 8 blends is because there are 8 letters in the word apostate. And we wanted one blend for each letter. And so if you look at our logo, each letter in our logo is represents one of the cigars in our line. I don't know if you can see the band, but we have APOSTATE all spelled out in these symbols that have to do with our story, our background as growing up as Mormons, and experiencing the loss of that community after we started forging our own path. I don't know how many listeners are familiar, but in Mormonism, the use of tobacco is forbidden. It's not something that is looked upon kindly.
No, no.
And if you use tobacco, it's it's like murder, having sex before marriage, smoking tobacco.
It's up there. Yeah. It's not a good one. Yeah.
God doesn't like it very much, and so I mean that's what our brand is about, being Mormon apostates.
I
Making
want
our
the 3 led you to leave Mormonism, but that's a different story.
Oh my God, that's a
That's-
whole different story.
That's a big discussion by itself. Yeah.
Um, Just to piggyback briefly on that topic, I don't know if you ever get tired of talking about that, or if you say no, well, it's part of our DNA, and we want to have that. Um, it- Me coming from a hospitality background, there was always this golden rule that at the bar, there's a couple of topics you rather not discuss with your guests:
Politics.
religion, politics, and the likes, being part of that whole list. And to a certain extent, I believe you could argue that that's true for a cigar lounge as well, right? Um, on the other hand, there are certain topics that have weight and impact and importance in life, and why not discuss them over a cigar? But do you ever get tired of having a conversation about that, or would you say it's so fundamentally part of Apostate's DNA and your guys' story that happy days, let's talk about it.
No, we're pretty sick and tired of talking about it. Let's just cancel this whole fucking thing. No.
No, I like that question because we did kind of, I don't want to say we painted ourselves into a corner, but we built that into who we are, right? So in order for us to walk into a lounge and be open and have a discussion about who we are as a brand and who we are as humans behind the brand, that discussion can never really be off the table. We're not walking into your cigar lounge and saying, all right, guys, we're going to talk about religion today. But you want to walk up to the table and ask us about our personal journey and why it turned into a cigar brand. Of course, we're happy to talk about it. We do it every day. It doesn't get boring because it leads to a lot of cool conversations and a lot of neat connections. But it is sort of something that we end up explaining a lot. I think people sometimes make the mistake that we're here to poke fun at the Mormon religion, and that's not our goal. Our goal is to talk about the loss of one community being replaced with another, right? And how we're bridging that gap with cigars. So it's a cool topic. It's always interesting. Sometimes you're tired and you don't want to talk about it, but this is who we are as a brand, right? So it's on the table. Yeah.
Did you ever have conversations with potential customers of yours, whether that's a retailer or an end consumer, where this was sort of a no-go argument as to why they wouldn't give it a shot or wouldn't try it?
No, I mean, I've had experiences traveling the country and visiting lounges where I can tell maybe a shop owner or a manager is sort of uncomfortable because they don't quite grasp the concept, right? One really good example was an account back east where their manager actually is still an active Mormon. And he was a little defensive about his religion, and was under the impression that maybe we were out here being a little too sacrilegious about it, right? It was really easy to just sit down with that manager and have a conversation about my background, about Kendrick's background, about what we're trying to do with the brand and why we embrace the Mormon symbology and the images that we do. And just really tell them it's not about disparaging anyone. It's about building a community. And we're getting to tell our story too, because that was our story. We both left the church around age 25. That's 25 years of my life that is not non-existent now. It doesn't get deleted. That was part of who I was. It's in my DNA, right? So yeah, we get to tell that story. We get to tell our version of it. And if it ties into building communication in new communities and new relationships, I don't see that as a bad thing. Ultimately, I think once people have a conversation with us, whatever hesitation they had is usually resolved.
I think it's pretty apparent when you talk to us that we're not, like Brandon was saying, we're not out there trying to knock any belief system or anything like that. We're just trying to tell our own story, and our journey is really about finding a new way of looking at life, you know. So it's a positive thing. We're adding, we're not trying to take away anything. We're trying to add.
That's an excellent point, and I was just thinking about my own experiences or my own perceptions of certain brands, and sometimes the concepts or the philosophy of a brand can be very generic and very broad, sort of trying to appeal to everybody, but with very little substance or very little to cling on to. On the other hand, you have certain brands, and another example would be if you lean heavily towards Freemasonry, for example, and we had
Right.
Fuad and Romy at the show talking about Hiram and Solomon.
Yep.
And they're super open-minded as well, and it's very obvious that not only Freemasons smoke their cigars, but I just sometimes wonder, is that a very exclusive, in the truest sense of word, proposition for connoisseurs sometimes, or do certain brands probably corner themselves a little too much with being very upfront and very aggressive in a positive sense with how much they lean onto one particular topic?
Uh, I think that it's possible that people kind of pigeonhole themselves into, a corner, so to speak. Uh, but we find that, for us, like we can only speak for ourselves. Our story, even though most of our customers are not former Mormons, although many are, um,
Yeah.
uh, I think a lot of people can relate to our story in some sense.
Mm,
Because really our story is about, losing one community and building and finding another community. And that is a very common human story that,
very true.
you know, there are apostates of everything.
Mm,
There, you know, uh, it's just it's a it's a part of human evolution.
very true. Brendan, let's go back to the comment you made earlier about certain things you felt missing in the market, or at least you trying to get into certain experiences, blends, flavor profiles that you felt were missing. And I want to take a step before that. Talking about your retail experience, how
Mhm.
did you guys curate the humidor at the Beehive? What's the philosophy behind it? I know also from previous interviews of yours, some of the brands that you were gravitating towards and sort of a boutique perspective and focus. I'm sure that also translates into how you stock the humidor. But what was the core principles that you set for yourselves when stocking the shelves of your own humidor? And then what were some of these missing elements you wanted to propose through Apostate Cigars and the experiences that you blended and ultimately put forth?
Good question. Yeah, when I was the general manager for Kendrick and I was basically doing the buying, Kendrick and I had a plan for the humidor, which was basically and we'll maybe give you a little tour here in a little while. We'll walk you down and you can
That'd be
see how
fabulous.
the humidor is. But it's a large space. There's a lot of facings. So you have two goals, right? You got to fill the shelves and have product to sell, but you've got to make sure that it's product that sells, right? You don't want product just sitting there. So it's a combination of what you as a tobacconist enjoy smoking, because that's a factor, and what your customers enjoy. We happen to be in a market that's very robust, even though we're in a pretty religious demographic. The counterculture is very strong, and that counterculture likes to enjoy its vices, right? We have a big whiskey scene, we have a big craft brew beer scene, we have a pretty good cigar scene. And so those customers are excited about what's new, but they also want availability of trying their staples, right? So you've got the legacy brands that do well, but obviously boutiques are going to do well because you've got a curious market. So when Kendrick and I were doing the buying, it was a pretty good mix of legacy versus boutique, and you push what has good feedback and you sort of phase out what doesn't. If people are excited and coming back, you're obviously going to hang on to that brand. If people are kind of mediocre about something, you maybe sort of let it go, right? So that that approach builds itself into how we blend cigars, in that now that we are curating a humidor, we're smoking everything, right? We're smoking every SKU in there, because how are you going to sell it if you haven't smoked it? So you get an idea of which factory likes to do what with their tobacco, what's their overall profile, right? What's their signature? So you become familiar with that. You become familiar with what packaging looks like. You become familiar with ring gauges and who likes what size and things like that. All of those little minutiae, the details, that turns into an opportunity for us to say, okay, what would we like to smoke that maybe we don't necessarily have a lot of access to? I'm smoking one right now. It's called the Liahona. This is our Connecticut. It was the third cigar we blended. It's a 45 ring gauge torpedo with a Connecticut wrapper, but it has a San Andres binder, Dominican filler, and a little bit of filler from Paraguay. We blended it that way because we want a Connecticut that has a unique size and shape, but it also has some complexity to it. The biggest complaint with Connecticut is that it's too light or it's too mild or it's not interesting, right? We didn't want it to be too light, too mild, or uninteresting. So we blended it in a way that it would cover those bases. Now we have a product that people will let us know they're interested in, but it's also something we really like to smoke. So we use that approach a lot. It's take what exists and use the retail experience and the cigar smoking experience to not necessarily make it better, but make it different, right?
Yeah, I might add, it wasn't so much about what gaps do we need to fill or what's missing, so much as what is it that, after smoking all of these different cigars, like has already been pointed out, we have a pretty good idea in our heads of what we want a cigar to taste like.
Mm-hmm.
When we're thinking Maduro, what is our dream Maduro? What does that dream Maduro taste like? And it may or not be a gap that is in the market,
right?
But it's something that. So going back to curating the humidor, and I'll tie it in. My philosophy on curating the humidor was what can I look my customers in the eye and sell with a good conscience
and be comfortable recommending.
What can I put in my customers' hands that I know that they're going to enjoy and feel good about that transaction on my end, that I've given them something that they're going to value in the experience. So there's that. And so then when it comes to blending the cigars, when it comes to selling our own brand, that same philosophy holds true, where what can we feel good about putting in our customers' hands? And the best that we can do is, when we're at the blending table and we zero in on the blend and the particular ratios of tobaccos, as soon as we don't want to stop smoking that cigar, we know that we can confidently sell that to a customer. Like, this cigar is a cigar that we don't want to stop smoking when we smoke it. Here you go.
Yeah, it's like your fantasy football team, right? You're sitting down at the beginning of the season, you're picking all your favorite players, you're looking at your team, you got a kick-ass team, you're going to win the league, right? When we're in the blending room, we're picking our fantasy team for tobacco. If we want a Maduro, we want it to be the highlight of everything we love about all the Maduros that we enjoy, right? It's not too strong. It's got some sweetness. It's got those classic Maduro flavors. So yeah, maybe there's not a gap in the market, but it's our opportunity to say, hey, we got a lot to play with here. How do we maximize what we've got access to in the form of a good product?
Rather than filling a hole, maybe we're just expanding the spectrum,
Great points. Now, when drafting a fantasy football team, you might have your dream players list, and then the draft comes along, and you're like, "Fuck, this one's taken, another one gone."
That happens.
And then you end up with that sort of B-class of people that you didn't have on your list. To take that analogy into the cigar factory, for a smaller boutique company, not being vertically integrated, of course, has certain benefits in terms of being agile, flexible, and not having a whole bunch of costs coming with your operation that not necessarily tie into your main focus product.
Mhm.
At the same time, you're probably not the first person to choose certain tobaccos, or
Right.
availability of the filet mignons might be lesser than when you buy 20 million cigars a year from X Factory.
Right.
Did you ever encounter that as an issue? Did you ever feel there were certain limitations as to what you can do with the factories that you're working with?
Course. And honestly, we found that that helps us with the creativity. Sometimes when you have too many options, you get overwhelmed by all those options. So like, for example, when we blended this cigar, this is our sixth cigar. It's called the Zarahemla. When we went in there to blend that cigar, we wanted it we wanted to blend something with a Cameroon wrapper, you know, like a real Cameroon wrapper. And as you know, that can be hard to come by. Not everybody has the kind of stuff that we were wanting. The factory that we have our cigars manufactured at is Tabacalera Palma in the Dominican, and Jochy has his own brand called La Galera, and he has a cigar called the Imperial Jade that has a really nice, rich Cameroon wrapper on it. And so we knew Jochy had Cameroon, so we went into the blending room wanting to use that Cameroon. And we told him that, and he said, sorry, I
Sorry,
no,
all spoken
it's
for.
all,
Yeah.
it's all taken.
Yeah, can't have it.
And we were like, well, damn it, we really want the flavor that Cameroon brings to the blend in this cigar. And so we were like, okay, well, do you have some binder? He's like, oh yeah, I have binder. And so on this cigar, originally we had conceived it in our heads as being a Cameroon wrapper with a Pennsylvania broadleaf binder. But since there was no Cameroon wrapper available for us to use, we flipped it and ended up using a Pennsylvania broadleaf wrapper and a Cameroon binder to the same effect, really. I mean, it's two leaves of equal proportion in the blend, so flavor that we're getting out of it ended up being what we were looking for, even though we didn't necessarily have the perfect scenario in terms of access to
Right.
that Cameroon wrapper that we were looking for.
Is there a potential scenario where, like in this case, and I love the example because it really gives us some perspective on what's happening behind the scenes and some of the challenges that you face, even as a brand owner, where not everything is always available. Um, is there a scenario where guys like you could approach Hochi and tell him, like, why don't you buy a little more of the Cameroon so that we can use some as well? How open would the manufacturer be to such an idea, or what would that bring with it in terms of other implications and challenges?
We're pretty lucky to be working with who we're working with. Hochi, I would definitely call him open. For example, our fourth blend is a Candela. And when we went down there to blend it, Hochi was against the idea because he doesn't like Candela, right? So he doesn't keep a lot of Candela on hand. But we ended up coming up with a really nice test blend using the Candela that he had in the factory. And he was like, yeah, you know what, let's do it. The problem is I don't have Candela. So that's kind of playing into what you're talking about. It's not necessarily available. How open is he to making it happen? He ended up dedicating a section of his farm in Jacagua to growing Candela for us just for this blend. So he's definitely, and I can't speak for every manufacturer out there, but Hochi is open to helping our vision happen for sure.
But what you're talking about too with planning in advance, that does require a lot of, I mean, from the time we decide if we decided, for example, that we absolutely were set on a Cameroon wrapper, well, yeah, we could have told Hochi that, but then, process from putting in that request to the wrapper being ready for the cigars might be a couple
Couple
years
years.
more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very true.
And so just to work with our time frame, we decided to just use the binder. But it's something that if you have a good relationship with the people that you're working with, they're, you know, they want to help you out. It's a team effort.
They want to see you succeed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting sidestep just on the Cameroon. What almost amazed me is that you rarely see Cameroon being used in the filler, even
Mhm.
though it can yield some spectacular results. Yeah, talking from experience, having tried some stuff with Jeremiah, it I don't know why. A few people have used it in the filler department, probably because of the price. Because
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that sort of leftover Cameron wrapper that's not sort of A grade wrapper, and you then want to use it in the filler is probably way more expensive than what you usually pack into the filler. But just a side thought that came to my mind.
Yeah, you know, I think a lot of people, when they think Cameroon, they automatically just think the wrapper leaf. But, you know, a premium cigar has, you know, 4, 5, 6 different leaves in it, and they all contribute to the flavor and experience of the cigar, and those are somewhat interchangeable. You know,
On
you
that
can.
note, one thing. Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, if you're looking for the flavor of a particular leaf, you can put it anywhere in the blend and get that flavor in your blend, you know.
Well, I'm sure depending on where you put it and proportionally, also
Mhm.
depending on the vitola, it'll play differently or have different
Sure.
impacts. And that's a perfect segue into something I want to ask you. When you talk about your cigars and the respective numbers or names, you're referencing to one particular vitola, and that's also very interesting. Your blends are blends specifically tailored to that particular vitola and not just like here's sauce A and then you blow it up and you pour it with all
Exactly.
different, well, here's your burger, here's your hot dog, here's whatever, and here's the magic sauce. um you specifically blend for a particular vitola. um
Yeah, so going back to curating the humidor and our experience as retailers, we find that, you know, you bring in a line of cigars that's got 4 or 5 sizes. Usually there's, you know, one of those sizes that really pops, right? Uh, and so, and not only that, but retailers have limited space, you know, and so using our experience, we wanted to kind of take away the guesswork that, you know, away from the retailer of which size in this line should I put on my shelf. Uh, Here it is. This is the one size of this blend that we have, and it helps them consolidate space in their humidor, and it takes away the guesswork of which vitola in the line is really going to pop.
Usually,
And
most
so,
blenders have a standard vitola that they use for blending and sort of testing the waters to get to the ultimate result. Do you have a standard vitola that you use for blending? Robusto, a Toro, a Corona?
more of a Corona. It's yeah, about a 44 ring gauge Corona is kind of the how we kind of hone in on the blend, and then you know, the ratios are adjusted once we figure out what size we want to get that taste that we're looking for.
Great point. Speaking about taste profile, um, throughout your own journey with cigars, how has your palate or how did your preferences change over the years? Because Kendrick, you mentioned earlier that you weren't necessarily just looking for a void in the market to be filled, but maybe your perfect idea of a Maduro, and then you blend towards that. How did that change for you over the years as to what you consider the perfect rendition of a certain theme?
Well, perfect rendition of a theme has certain universal elements in it. Talking about like one thing that's primary for us is a really nice, clean finish on the palate that doesn't leave, you know, a chimney taste in your mouth afterwards, for example. And that comes from proper fermentation at the right temperature for the right amount of time. And so that's one factor. And also, you know, Brandon and I are chain smokers. We like to smoke all day long,
All day,
sometimes.
all day. Yeah, all day.
And so another element for us that goes into our blends is what's a cigar that we can smoke all day long. And so that means that none of our cigars are going to be super heavy hitters. They're all kind of in the medium range, plus or minus. And we're going for flavor, and the strength just ends up being what it is. The first thing when we did our first blending trip, the very first thing that Jochy taught us about blending was that it's all about balance. And extracting what that means, there's a balance between flavor and strength, for example. There's a balance in the flavors that you're experiencing on your palate. You don't want it to feel uneven on your tongue. You want all the palate to be coated in some way or another. And
then you have the retrohale.
Yeah. The balance between what it's doing on your tongue and what it's doing in your nose. How it feels, how it looks. It's kind of a Zen thing, you know. It's like it's a balance.
Interesting point that I had thought about earlier, in that none of Jochy's cigars ever struck me as super powerful.
Right.
I find his various Legalera blends to be primarily about the harmony and to have a more elegant underlying theme, with a wonderful balance to it in general. Was that one of the reasons, particularly, that you chose Jochy as the factory you wanted to work with, because you saw that as part of his house style?
No question.
Absolutely.
Jochy was our first and only call when it came to making our cigars, because we knew how he treats tobacco. We knew his philosophy behind it. It's just a no bullshit kind of philosophy, right? It's about the cigar, it's about the tobacco, it's about the experience that you're offering. Yeah,
it's cool. It's like being a new chef, right? And you're learning under this master chef. You're in the same kitchen, you have the same fridge, it's full of the same ingredients, and you're learning those methods. And having access to Jochy's tobacco is a blessing for us. But learning his approach really helped too, because once you know the approach, then you can personalize it and make it your own, right? And so, yes, we're using a lot of the same ingredients that Jochy uses. We're using his rollers, so the construction is going to be similar. But where we differ is in what we think a balanced cigar profile tastes like, and we're doing things differently with what we're putting into blends. You know, we're using more garlic and less salt in the kitchen, right? So it's one of those. It's really cool to learn from him so that we can make it ours.
Walk us a little bit through how such an entry conversation would look like with manufacturer, when you have a certain idea in mind and then you talk to a master at his craft. How does that initial, clicking or bonding or relaying your message and what you want to achieve to somebody like Jochy, was it just instantly clear, you were aligned, you had the same philosophy, the same direction, or how much is sort of adjusting as you go and trying to find some common ground?
it depends on which blend you're talking
It depends
about.
on the cigar for sure. Yeah.
Like Brandon's already pointed out with the Candela, we told Jochy we wanted to do a Candela, and he's like,
Nope.
Fuck no.
Don't do it.
Don't
Yeah,
do it.
he said, don't do it. I don't like candela.
Don't do it. Nobody will like it. Don't do it. That's a bad idea. And we're like,
Please. Yeah.
please just let us try it. Let us try it. He's like, well, you can try, fine. And once we figured out a blend that, again, we didn't want to stop smoking, he was like, okay, I'll make it for you.
He pretended to be reluctant, but I think he liked it. Yeah. Yeah.
And then other cigars, like the Deseret that I'm smoking now, this one. This was a pretty unanimous agreement. Once we settled on the blend, he's like, that's a good cigar. I think this is going to do well for you guys. And we're like, yes.
Yeah, some of them he's a little hesitant about, but once the product is in front of him, obviously we're seeking his seal of approval a little bit, right? It's a product coming out of his factory. We want it to be something that not only are we proud of, but he's proud to manufacture. So far, I think everything that's come out of his factory for us has had his seal of approval on it.
Mhm.
And sometimes we listen to his advice, and sometimes we don't. Like with the Candela, we did not listen to his advice. But on our fifth cigar, the Sword of Laban, we originally wanted that one Vitola to be a Lancero, and he convinced us that we should not do a Lancero. And so we were
Just
like,
because
okay.
of the Vitola, or because of that particular blend in that Vitola?
It was more about how the market would treat a Lancero.
Yeah.
It was more about sales optic. Right?
He pulled up his own La Galera numbers and showed us that his Lancero was the least selling Vitola in that line, and we're like, oh, okay, let's make it a 7.5 by 47 instead.
So we made a Churchill, yeah, Cuban sized Churchill instead, and accomplished the same thing we wanted with the blend. But that was one time where his feedback led to us making a product that's really successful now. Yeah.
8 blends, 8 Vitolas, 8 SKUs. That's a relatively clear, well-structured portfolio with not too much fluff around it. How about your idea, and again, maybe through the retail lens first, when it comes to portfolio size, limited editions, and if I may say, with what we currently explore in the industry, where it's all about the limited edition, it's all about the what's new and something plopping up here and there, but very few companies putting their energy and effort into building that core portfolio and truly establishing a legacy brand to come, or a legacy blend to come, because it's stood the test of time and been there for 25 years.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have some limited edition ideas on the table, and those are appealing from a blending standpoint, because if you're doing a limited edition, you can use tobaccos that are limited, that might not be available for for 20 years. So when it comes to our core line, most of our fillers are tobaccos that Jochy grows himself. And we know they're going to be readily available for years to come. But at the same time, sometimes Jochy has a very special crop of something that either he grew himself or acquired from another grower that we're going to want to use for something. And it might only, he might only have enough for 20,000 cigars or whatever.
Mhm.
And so we do look forward to kind of playing around in that realm at some point. But yeah, like you said, we're really looking at establishing a solid, readily available core line of cigars that smoke like limited editions, in terms of, like just really good high quality stuff,
I think the pitfall with limited editions too is that there's a chance that now that's what you're known for, right? And we don't want to be known for our limited editions. We want to be known for a solid quality core line of product. And by the way, here's a really good limited edition. every now and then, right? We don't want to be dropping 3 limiteds a year or anything like that. We're going to be very, very specific about it. It's going to be well planned out, and it is going to be a one and done. We want retailers to feel supported, and I can't support a retailer by having them constantly on back order for limited edition shit that they don't have access to, right? Even though the demand is high. So if we've got a good core line of product that's readily available and a retailer is confident that they can turn product in their shop and keep people smoking, we'd rather be in that boat. Limiteds are fun, but it will never be our focus.
And additionally to what you just said, Brandon, in essence, you're constantly putting a product from the shelf, trying to replace it with another thing.
Exactly.
And real estate in your humidor is
Right.
extremely valuable. And once you take something off the shelf,
Yep.
it's hard to regain that space unless you immediately have something to put there. But I guess for a lot of manufacturers, that's not necessarily the cycle that they operate in, because you might run out of a limited edition at some point, but the next thing is either not up yet or you launched it even before.
Right.
So it doesn't always add up. And yeah,
I'm a big fan of purchasing and smoking limited editions. I love limited stuff. I think it's a unique smoking experience every time. Whether it's their best blend or not, it's something new. I like the creative side of it. I like that you're creating something new and you're having fun. But yeah, I think for us the focus is always going to be a solid core line.
What are some of the attributes and qualities you are looking for in your retail partners that you work with?
First and foremost, we want our retailers to care about the experience that they're giving their customers. And understanding the triangular relationship between the manufacturer, the retailer, and the consumer. We need to be connected directly to the consumer in some way, and we need to be very connected with the retailers. And the retailers, in turn, need to be very connected with the consumer. And having that triangle of relationship, the triangle is the sturdiest, architectural structure. And it also holds true in a lot of other non-physical realms, in terms of relationship. So we definitely want retailers who have strong relationships with their customers. The customers trust them, and we want to be able to trust the retailer with that relationship. We're kind of putting our relationship with the consumer in their hands in a lot of ways.
I think the retailers that we're seeing success with right now have a very common thread, and it's the retailers who value community the same way we do. Because like we said, our whole point to being here is that we had a community that we left and we were lost in the wilderness for a little while, and then we found cigars, and now that's our community. We're actively building cigar community here at Beehive in Salt Lake City, and we want that to be the mold for the retailers that we work with, folks who are building a community. You can walk in and find 8 or 9 guys there on a certain night, and they're all, that's their regular thing. People who understand and are as passionate about the binding property of tobacco the same way that we are. So the retailers who are really good at that are the ones who are thriving with our brand right now, for sure.
May I interject something really quick? I was in Bend, Oregon on a trip here just 2 weeks ago.
Cigar Chapel.
And yeah. and I have to tell you, the last thing in the world I expected to see were your apostates in there. And he was very high on showing me the apostates. And I had already bought my cigars. I didn't see them on the shelf. He brought me in and I had to buy a bunch more. But it was because the owner's relationship with not just you guys, but with that cigar itself, with those cigars themselves. And to find it in a little town like Bend, Oregon, which has like 2 cigar shops.
Right.
it was absolutely amazing. So I really appreciate what you said about the relationship with the cigar shop.
Yeah, and John up there at Cigar Chapel is exactly who I'm talking about. I mean, that's exactly the kind of retailer that we want to do business with. He's excited about our product. He's excited about us as humans. We're excited about him. We love seeing him succeed. And he does nothing but make people feel welcome, give them a place to sit. He's keen on introducing them to new things. There was a while there where he would send me screenshots that Apostate was his top selling cigar week after week. You know, it's a really good relationship. That's a cool shop. That's one of my favorite places to go.
We like having retailer relationships with people that we want to hang out with.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah.
Like we spend a lot of time with these people, and you want to like them. You want to hang out with them, you know?
Absolutely. Now, the fact that you guys are two rather than just one founder already helps, but still, there's limited time and limited options of traveling and going all around the country, visiting accounts. How do you think about growth and translating that relationship and building those relationships into working with reps, brokers, people who take your message, carry it further, and act as a relay station for that relationship building?
Yeah, we're just entering that territory now. We're lucky enough to be working with a few brokers now. Our approach to working with these individuals is that we want to work with people who understand not only who we are as a manufacturing team, but as humans having a cigar experience, right? And so it's nice to find people who are on the same wavelength as us. And I think so far we've done that. They're really good at going out there and basically I can trust them to sit in a lounge with the shop owner and deliver our message appropriately, share the product appropriately, come back to us with any questions that need answering. So as far as growth goes, really our focus is on building those relationships. We want to build, it's more about quality than quantity for us. So when I'm out on the road, I just got back yesterday from the Chicago area. As I'm out in that area visiting shops, my focus is on shaking hands, making relationships, enjoying a cigar with somebody who owns a business, and seeing how we can fit into their scheme of things, seeing how we can help them feel like they're being successful. So I think for us so far in the 3 years that we've been selling cigars, that's been the most effective approach for us. Our growth is noticeable.
Just out of curiosity, if you're not familiar with a certain territory or the tobacconist landscape in the city, do you rely on recommendations from other brands that sort of fall into a similar category, size, or philosophy as you do?
Absolutely.
We're really lucky to have friends all across the industry. And we don't look at them like competitors. We look at them like we're all in this boat together. And
Very true. Very true.
we just help each other out. And so if someone that we respect in the industry says, hey, you really need to go check these guys out, we're going to take that as a very strong indicator of where we should be. You know, yeah, I mean, it's no cigar brand is an island. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. This was my first trip to that area of the Midwest, right? I was there last week through yesterday. It's my first time in the Chicago area, and I was lucky enough to be out there at the same time as a couple of folks from McAuliffe. And they were very open to telling me, you know, here's some really good accounts that I think would vibe with your brand. Please go see so-and-so, tell them I sent you. We lean on those relationships as much as we can. It's a great resource and it's been really helpful. Yeah.
Beautiful. And yeah, as you said, I think a true testament to the industry as a whole and the camaraderie and community, even amongst quote unquote competitors. And I couldn't agree more with you, Kendrick. At the end of the day, you know, rising tide raises all ships, and we have to support each other and help each other and try to grow the pie for everybody rather than slicing pieces from other people. Couldn't agree more. Question in the chat box. Any plans to grow outside of the US and tap into the international markets?
Absolutely. We're getting to that point where we're ready to start expanding in that way. We would love to see ourselves at Intertabac very soon, hopefully maybe next year even. Now that we have all of our 8 core line blends out, I think now we're ready. So the answer is yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Great stuff. Good to hear, and we look forward to seeing some stuff on our side of the pond.
Yeah, we want to come hang out with you in Vienna, man.
Oh, well, that's for sure. We'll make that happen. That's a promise. Let me flip the question on its head and try to look the other way around. What have you guys learned for the Beehive and for the retail side through running your own brand and your contacts and relationships with other retailers?
What have we learned through Beehive?
What have we learned? What's our approach to Beehive now after being on the manufacturing side?
Oh, I don't know that it's evolved that much. I think it's just been more solidified and strengthened. The philosophy that we had has proven itself, and it's helped us know who we are more. You know what I mean? This is who we are, and this is what we are trying to present to the world, and having the vision just gets clearer and clearer and clearer, and that just comes with time and experience.
Great point. Do you feel that sometimes there's a bit of a disillusional element when sort of looking behind the curtains and seeing the behind the scenes of a certain industry, what's happening in the manufacturing department?
I don't know if it's a dissolution, maybe a little bit, but I mean, granted, I mean, everybody that's listening knows that there is a lot of mystique and mystery behind what goes on behind the curtain in this industry. And what I've learned is that there's no one mystery. Going back to cigars as an art form, every artist has a different way of doing their art. And so in turn, every blender has a different way of doing it. We have our way, and it's the best way for us. Other people do it differently. Other people have a very specific idea of the exact flavors that they want. And ours is a little bit more experimental, and then we know it once we get to it, kind of a thing. Some blenders are far more analytical about it. They want to take they want it all quantified in zeros and ones in some way. And our approach is more ethereal, I guess. I don't know if that makes sense or not,
100%, absolutely.
Uh,
Kendrick, you're a fellow musician, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Oh, I didn't know you were a musician.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
great.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. We need to nerd out about that sometime.
Do you think that it ties into your approach or philosophy there?
100,
Absolutely.
110%.
Yeah, oh yeah.
In fact, when we're blending, I'm thinking in terms of music.
Mhm.
When I'm tasting the notes in a cigar, I'm thinking about bass and treble and mid-range. Oh, this going back to balance thing, right? There needs to be an equalization balance. The right sound needs to come through in the right way while being balancing with the other frequencies in the blend. And not only that, but the dynamics of the cigar, how it changes from the first third to the second third to the final third. And so there's the equalization, and then there's the dynamic range of the cigar. you know, where, what, every cigar is a song.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just on the evolution, that's a very interesting part. I want to zoom in a little bit as well. Just before the show, Drew Emmer sent me a message talking about your Candela. And Brandon, I love the interview that you did at the PCA with Drew. And first of all, he's a fabulous person to have a conversation
Love
with.
Drew. Yeah.
And that translates into wonderful interviews to watch as well. And I thoroughly enjoyed yours, obviously. But you also spoke about the evolution of the cigar that you were smoking together during that chat. And Kendrick, you just made that point. We all love that in a cigar. However, as a consumer, most people watching would probably wonder, that's all nice and dandy, but you're talking about a leaf of tobacco or multiple leaves of tobacco in there. How do you get that? So, do you work in specific repositioning, bunching methods, or do you actually ask the rollers to work in a certain way when tearing off or repositioning leaf in order to get to an evolutionary smoking experience?
We don't necessarily prescribe the exact method that they roll it. That's something that we kind of outsource to the expertise of the roller. However, again, there's a balance there. You know, a leaf of tobacco, the part of the leaf that is closest to the main stem is going to be stronger than the tip of the leaf because it's further away from the main nutrient source of the leaf. And so when that goes into the cigar, how that is, which direction that leaf is positioned in the blend is what creates that dynamic range of the song, right? So a cigar that builds in strength and intensity as you smoke it, the leaves are positioned in such a way that as you smoke it down, you're getting closer and closer to the part of the leaf that was closest to the main stem of the tobacco plant. Or a cigar, you know, so balance wise, if you have 4 filler leaves, you want 2 of them positioned one way and 2 of them positioned the other way to kind of create that even dynamic range and balance in the cigar. We don't specify which leaves do what when we're at the blending table. That's something that we leave
the rollers.
Great.
Yeah, and they're doing a great job so far. Yeah.
Yeah.
Albert, I don't know if you want to chime in and ask your question, which I just saw in the chat box, but I would love for you to chime in, buddy.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks, guys, for so far a wonderful interview, and Reinhardt for amazing show as always. It's actually a very simple question, so, and we're gonna ignore Andy for this question because does not really fall in that audience, that profile. So, how would you describe your core audience? Because the branding, the way it looks, the even the way that how owners portray themselves in the wider audience, it's all ties into branding, and you guys look like rock stars. It's so cool and everything, but it's your brand can be described in so many ways, like mystique, even goth style, like it shrieks of that kind of nuances. So what is your core audience? How you describe your core audience? Because like I said, certain elements might not appeal, for someone who is looking for a shiny, cigar, or something like Davidoff or Fuente, Padron. So how you guys, position yourself?
I think it's sort of organically turned into a core audience of basically people who are open-minded, right? I've heard the brand described back to me by consumers and other people in the industry as a little bit edgy, unique, fresh, right? So we definitely want to lean into that. I think if we got to pick a favorite consumer, it would be someone who loves good tobacco. I mean, that's all there is to it. We're working with incredible ingredients that are fermented fantastically. A cigar nerd is really who we're after, right? But we want to have broad appeal as well. I know obviously we're not going to hit that for everybody, like you said, but I think the people who are open-minded, who are not necessarily locked into a certain channel for what they enjoy, and who like to embrace variety, those guys are for us, for sure.
And I would add that
Thank you. That's actually
we're,
falls
we're just a
within.
bunch of we're a bunch of lost boys and lost girls in Neverland, and we're Peter Pan, you know.
Yeah.
Uh,
I noticed on your website your California stores.
Mhm.
And I was very impressed because you seem to have the humble of humblest, most of them. They're very humble, very nerdish, very good stores. You know, Stogie's Gold Country, which is a real small area,
Yeah.
Oregon Hill, Ohlone Cigars, places like that. But I did have an interesting question for you. The Deseret, I noticed you had put 3 little strips of Connecticut at the bottom of that, and what that does for the little taste of the cigars. And I've been noticing more and more people doing little tastes of things. I'm not a big Candela fan, but I'm going to tell you I enjoyed your Candela, the one you guys gave me in Vegas. Very nice cigar. But there are a couple of companies that make cigars. I don't want to bring up names of other companies, but they make this one particular cigar, and I didn't care for it, but everyone was saying, "Oh, it's such a good cigar." And they did the same cigar with just a little bit of Candela at the cap. Not the cap, I'm sorry. They did at the cap, but not the foot.
Yeah.
And it made a huge difference, just that little bit of Candela at the bottom. So I wanted to ask you, do you find little pieces of other tobaccos added in exterior or with the wrapper making a big difference on some of your cigars?
well, so for the Deseret, it started out purely as an aesthetic choice. The Deseret, the word means honeybee. It's a term that comes from the Book of Mormon, and it means honeybee. And so again, everything in our brand is tied in with itself in some way. So the Deseret we wanted to resemble a honeybee.
Interesting.
So we put the stinger on the cap
Mm-hmm.
and the stripes on the foot so that the cigar itself looked like a honeybee. And
Oh. Mm-hmm.
and what we found was that aesthetic choice actually added a unique thing to the blend experience. When you smoke that first inch of the cigar, you do notice a little bit of a change, and it forces you to pay attention to that because there is a difference. Absolutely.
Also, are you planning on doing any events in California?
Definitely.
Yeah, we do events all the time in California, actually.
I would love to find out when you're doing it. Yeah, I mean, I've known you guys for years, but I'd love to see it, and spend some time with
absolutely.
you.
So on the website where we have our events page, and we try to keep it as current as possible. I was actually just out there 3 weeks ago, doing we did Morgan Hill, Ohlone, what else? I don't know. I had 3 or 4 events.
We did
Telford's
Telford's earlier this year.
Yeah, so we're quite a bit. It's easy for us to travel out there. So yeah, next round we'll definitely reach out to you and let you know we're coming.
Yeah, definitely do, because you know, as much as I love Susan Telford, she's about the size of your Deseret.
I love her.
Or 4'10", 4'11".
Yeah. On a good day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you in Northern Cal, Central, Southern?
Central.
Okay.
Dead
Cool.
central.
Perfect.
Yeah. And we haven't seen your cigars yet in Fresno. We have 4 cigar shops in Fresno, but I'm definitely going to talk to one of my friends who owns one of the shops about getting you guys in and seeing what we can do.
We definitely have Fresno on our radar. We meant to go there when we were in California earlier this year, and ended up not having the time, but the next time we're in that area, we'll be there for sure.
Yeah,
And we'll
it's a hop, skip, and a jump from my house. I mean, it's literally 15 minutes. So
oh,
Cool. Yeah, tell us who to go see. We'll hit them up. Absolutely.
Masfina.
Perfect. That was already high on the list. So
Yeah, I'll talk to Chris about it.
Gentlemen, before we wrap things off, I want to briefly take a look from like the 30,000 feet above perspective, a bit more holistically on the industry. Just a couple of days ago, the latest import numbers into the US were reported, specifically for the first half of 2024. And in that first half of the year, the US imported more premium cigars than it did during the same period in 2023, which was already record-breaking high numbers. Is that something that you see reflected in consumer behavior, how the people act when they come into your shop, how they purchase cigars, how they smoke cigars, or what's your perception on the bigger picture and where the industry is headed as a whole?
we're in a cigar renaissance. I think the pandemic created a shift in people's minds about certain things, and it really forced everyone to slow down and reflect. And that was one of the positive things that came out of an otherwise terrible situation. But yeah, there are more cigar smokers now than there were. And at Beehive, every day we get somebody walking in. I want to be a cigar smoker. Like it's like it's something that they're called to.
it's basically daily. Yeah.
It's a calling that people experience. They're called to cigars in some way. And I mean, what is a cigar except an excuse to slow down and pay attention? Pay attention
Cheaper
to
than therapy.
pay attention to what you're doing. Pay attention to the experience you're having. Paying attention to what is going on in the room. What's going on with the people that are in the room with you. And kind of just, we replaced one communion for another form of communion. And as we're in a world that's more connected in some ways than ever with social media and things, but in other vital ways, we're more disconnected than ever. And cigars are one of those ways in which it's connecting people in a real physical way. And I don't think that need for human connection is going away anytime soon.
Yeah, I think the cigar industry as a whole, to do the zoom out you talked about, is it's one of peaks and valleys, right? It's up and down, and that takes years. It's a drawn out process, and I think right now we're lucky to be riding a wave that's still in its crescendo, right? It hasn't plateaued yet. I think the pandemic was responsible for that. I think people being a little more open-minded and a little more curious is responsible. And I think we're probably going to ride this wave for at least a couple more years, just based on how it feels to me. I don't have market data to back that up. I'm just talking about how it feels when I'm at an event or when I'm in a shop. Every event I've done in the last 2 months, I've met somebody who is having their first cigar. That's huge. So like Kendrick said, you've got new smokers coming to the table, but the smokers who have been here are showing up more as well. So I think hopefully we can continue to see that go on for a little while.
That's fantastic to hear. Mike just reminded us we wanted to do a little tour, and maybe you can show us a bit of the beehive, if it's
Sure.
convenient, so we can show the world your cast.
Do so. So
Here, you got it?
I got it. Okay. I'm going to pick up the computer here. So this is our office. This is where Apostate was conceived. We were sitting in these very chairs during the pandemic going, well, what are we going to do with our lives now? Well, let's make cigars. So, all right, let me move out of the office here. This is another, the lights are kind of dim. Let me see if I can turn the lights on a little bit. We have this kind of lounge area up here. And then we're in a kind of loft. So if you look down below, you have the main lounge. Down there, we have, come with me. So this is the main kind of lounge area. We've got, you know, everything here. And then moving into, this is, you know, the locker room where cigars are stored. And then we're going to move through storeroom here. This is one of our storerooms. We have shelves of cigars everywhere. And this is the storefront. This is one of our resident tobacconists extraordinaires. Say hi to Scotty right here. We have our register, a bunch of pipe tobaccos. We have, you know, our wall of pipes and tin tobaccos here. And then this is the main humidor walking in. So this is our first humidor area. I'll show you the Apostate line on the shelf right there. As you can see, they're all represented by one of the symbols in our logo, and it spells Apostate across the. So when all 8 blends are on the shelf, it's one big shelf talker, and then this is where we keep our house blends right here. This is a manager of the store now. This is Taylor. Say hi to everyone.
How do you do?
Yeah. And I'll just kind of walk through here. Excuse me. How are you doing? Good, thanks. So we are. And that's basically it right there.
Thank you so
Very
much.
nice.
Greg.
Have they put a damper on you allowing smoking indoors in your private lounge?
Say that again?
Have they put a damper on you smoking in your private lounge?
Well, no. At one point, it was public, and we were letting anybody back here that bought a cigar in the humidor, and they did stop us from doing that. But we still have this private space, and as long as it remains private, nobody bothers us. So
Beautiful tour. Many thanks, Kendrick.
Well,
Gentlemen, it's been such a pleasure to share this session with you today, and thank you so much for everything that you shared with us, all the insights, and taking us not only on the tour of the Beehive, but also through the history of Apostate. Guys, I can only wish you all the very best and tremendous success for the journey ahead, and keep raising the bar and keep pushing. It's inspiring to have dedicated gentlemen like yourselves in the industry, also part of a younger generation of the industry with some fresh blood, fresh energy, and great ideas. And I wish you continued success and joy with everything that you do with Apostate. And I can't wait to visit you in Salt Lake City and to have you here in Vienna. And we'll smoke a great cigar together.
thank you. Yeah, it's been our pleasure. Yeah, it's been great talking to you. You ask really thought-provoking questions, and we like being we like talking to people that are engaging in ways that kind of challenge us. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it.
Much appreciated, really. It means a lot, but I always say that I'm just a humble servant. It's all about sharing these wonderful stories and stories like the one that you brought to our attention today. So again, many thanks, and all the best to you, Kendrick and Branson.
Thank
Much
you.
appreciated.
You too. Thank you.
Great
Well,
show,
thank you
guys.
so much for
Really.
tuning in today. Great show. We'll see you all same time, same station next week. I'll be in the US, so I'll be joining you from somewhere along the road, either New York City or Philly, most likely, with the old man, George Brightman, will be sitting right next to me. So
Nice.
same time, same station. I'll see you then. Chime in, and until then, light them up, everybody. And many thanks again to Kendrick and Branson from Apostate Cigars for tonight. Cheers. Goodbye, everybody.
Cheers.
Are you right?